Hi everyone, welcome back to the Nature Patch. Today I'm up in a different area of the garden that I don't really show too much. It's the area around the pool here, and I had some raised beds back here that I've been growing some food in for the last year or so, but they're actually going to new homes very soon, so I need to empty everything out of them. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to show you kind of what these beds look like after about almost a year or so of breaking down. These beds were a Hugelkultur bed. I've done a few videos on the Hugelkultur technique. Basically, it's a technique where you add in a lot of logs or larger debris down the bottom to kind of fill up the space in a bed, and then add your soil on top. And the woody materials down the very bottom of the bed kind of act as a sponge for the water as it breaks down. However, I've actually had a few problems with these beds that I'll get into in a little bit. But firstly, I need to go and grab the wheelbarrow and some shovels to be able to empty all of these beds. And any of the better soil that is in here, I'm going to be adding to the garden beds down the bottom, probably on the piles where I've been doing my in-ground composting, just to add to those no-dig layers down in the garden there. So the reason I'm not a fan of these beds anymore has nothing to do with the actual beds themselves. I think they're really great. They're very affordable from Bunnings, only about $20 or so for a really good sized bed. Something that I have been dealing with both in this place and the house that we lived at prior to here. I know a few of you have been watching since then, so you'll know that we've always lived kind of near a lot of trees and in a bushland kind of setting. Another thing that if you're new here, we don't actually own the house we're living at. We live with family at the moment. Scott and I are trying to save up for our own house, and this is the best way for us to do that is by living with family members. So we're really limited with creating infrastructure, large kind of garden beds here. We like to do it on a fairly tight budget, and one of the things that we did in our other place and here was having raised beds because they were quite cheap. I didn't have to rip up an entire area of grass or anything like that. I could just put it where I wanted it. The problem that I have come to is that a lot of the raised beds around that I have tried lately have been getting tree roots in them. This is a really bad problem for growing plants with shallow roots. The trees around here are really adapted to a very dry climate in winter and a lot of summer. And when you introduce water to that area, everything around, including all of the microbes and all of the living life, is attracted to that water. And that is exactly what has happened in some of my garden beds, as well as the garden down below where I have all of those really large rows growing in the ground. There are loads of different ways you can fix this by putting weed matting down or placing it in an area where there's not a lot of trees around. Unfortunately, we don't have that option here. So that's my very long-winded way of saying that these garden beds kind of did fail a little bit, as well as the fact that I used the Hugelkultur technique, which was probably just a little bit dry for this climate. It would have been great if it was getting more regular water, but then I would have had the problem of getting more tree roots. So just out of interest, I want to see what it looks like at the bottom here, to see if there is a lot of life, to see if there's kind of worms that have moved in. And I think it would be a good opportunity to share with you what it looks like. This area I think would be great for in-ground no-dig gardening, where you're constantly adding more organic matter and layers onto the surface. Scott's just bought me a coffee, so now I'm happy. And I'm finding that the no-dig technique works really, really well for the garden beds down at the bottom of the property. So I'm going to just stop talking now and tear apart these garden beds and have a look at what's going on underneath. And then I've got a few other jobs that I want to get done this morning that I will take you along with me. One thing you do definitely just need to be aware of is snakes and everything can live around garden beds. So if you are doing that, make sure you look out for snakes first and wear appropriate footwear. So I can already see quite a lot of worms in here, which is really good to see. In this bed, I should just preface, I added quite a lot of compost in with mulch. This is all I've basically added into here, as well as digging in a lot of food scraps. So that's probably what they're going through now. But overall, this mixture is very dry and has way too much carbon in it, which is a real big problem with a lot of Hugelkultur beds, is that the carbon just really sinks a lot of the nitrogen out. So something to keep in mind for next time, definitely. So as you can kind of see, it's a little hard with this light, but it is starting to create a little bit of a soil profile. All of the compost that I put in on the top layer has gradually sunk down to the bottom, and a lot of this coarse layer is still on top, which is a lot of the mulch that I had. So in hindsight, I would have added a lot more nitrogen to this bed, but it looks really dry right now. That's just because we haven't had rain for a long time. But in a more wet climate, this wouldn't be as bad as it is here. You can kind of see there's still some food scraps in there. This is just an avocado peel. And I have seen quite a few worms as well. So I'm going to try and dig down to the very bottom layer and see if I can find any. Okay, so this is what you do want to see when you have the Hugelkultur beds. I've come down to the layer now where the actual wood is. This is the very base layer that I added on, and you can start to see it is slowly starting to break down. But around it here is a lot of this finer material, along with, you can kind of see all of these roots, tree roots that are starting to creep in. We don't want those. But a lot of this finer material around the wood is actually the result of a lot of the worms starting to break it down. And I did come across quite a few worms in here. They are doing their job right now. And this is the beauty of Hugelkultur, that the longer you leave it, the finer the material gets and the wood just continues to break down. The wood is really like a hub for different microbes, and the worms love being around this area because it stays a lot more moist when you get rain. But I'm really happy with how this progressed at this level. It's not that old, but I'm sure if I would have left it longer, it would have continued to break down even more. I should have just been continuously adding a lot more green manure on the top of it to create more life in the soil and nitrogen as well. Okay, that is one done. And this is what the wood is looking like at the very end. It's got some pretty funky things on it, so I don't really want to touch it for too long. But it's actually really spongy, and this is quite surprising for this type of wood. This is eucalyptus wood, very, very hard and takes quite a long time to break down. But I am seeing signs, you can see here, that there's been a lot of mycelium action and microbes breaking it down so that it really just kind of falls apart. It's very flaky and very spongy. And this is one way that you can tell that your Hugelkultur beds are doing well, is if you dig down to the wood layer and it's spongy and you can kind of feel it spring back a little bit. That's a good sign that it's doing really well. So overall, I think the structure of this bed was really great. It just needed a lot more nitrogen at the start and no bamboo around and large trees. So Scott is going to thankfully work on that one for me while I go down and I'm going to spread out the rest of that mixture. Towards the end, it was really quite fluffy and really, really beautiful down towards the wood. So I'm going to use that to spread it out on my in-place composting mounds. So there's the neighbour's cat. We're actually not sure which neighbour or if it's just a stray cat, but I'd adopt him if we didn't already have 3 cats in the house. So I'm going to grab my wheelbarrow and my seed and head down to the other garden. Cockatoo. Oh, you're taking my flowers. Excuse me. What's the point of that? It's literally taking the cosmos flowers off. Just pick them off. Naughty. Okay, so it's a lot later in the day now. It was just too hot to continue doing stuff this morning, so we ended up going to a few different nurseries and garden centres, which is going to be in another vlog of everything we bought from those places. But the other jobs that I have to do this afternoon is I really want to get some of my corn planted. These are the first of the corn that I've planted, and I really want to do kind of like a bit more succession sowing of sweet corn. They have roots coming out of the bottom, so they're definitely ready to be planted. And I have 9 that germinated really well, which is good because I can kind of do a grid of 3 by 3. Corn is something you definitely want to plant in clumps or in a grid formation because it pollinates by wind. The more you have closer together, the better the pollination is going to be. So let me grab my phone. So these ones are an early extra honey sweet F1 variety, which means they're not a stable variety, but it's in the last stages of it becoming a proper plant, a proper stable species. But these ones I've grown before and they are super delicious. I really enjoy growing sweet corn, and Southeast Queensland is a great climate to grow sweet corn. They're a plant that does need a lot of nitrogen, so just before I took out some broccoli that was well past its date, and I kind of just fluffed up the soil a little bit in that area, and that's actually in my flower bed that I have down the very bottom of the garden. And I really wanted a little bit more structure in the middle of that bed, and I thought I've got 9 different corn plants. It's probably a perfect area to plant these in the ground because it's kind of the only grid space that I have right now in that space before the potatoes come out, which will be very, very soon. So I'm going to plant these, and then in a few weeks I'm going to sow some more seeds so I can plant a succession crop of corn, because I do like to have quite a bit of sweet corn. And this is a crop where they're all ready at the same time. It's not really a come and pick and then it grows back again kind of crop. You really just get a few cobs that you need to pick at the same time. I've had a lot of success with growing corn, but they do need a lot of water. So make sure that it is in an area that the water kind of drains towards. For me, this is at the very bottom of the bed where all of my swales drain towards, and the water kind of pools. But I also will be heavily watering this. Corn is basically a grass. It likes a lot of nitrogen, so I've also amended the soil with a lot of horse manure. And I am going to be feeding it some plant food as well. So I'm going to get these in the ground, but while I'm here in my little seed raising area, I thought I would show you some of the other seeds that I sowed earlier this morning. This is one of my favorite jobs, is on the weekend coming down and picking a few seeds from my collection and just sowing small plants. It really does pay off in the long run because I always have plants ready to be planted. I don't have to go to the nursery or spend a lot more money on plant starts when I can just start them myself. To make it a lot more manageable for myself, I just pick a few different plants that I want to plant every weekend. And it's just one tray that I can just come down with my morning coffee and plant some seeds, and it is a lot less stressful than planting everything in one go. So this is my little plant tray that I like to use. These are actually kitty litter trays that the cats just were not a fan of. So I have repurposed them to use as seed raising trays, and they're really good because the water just pulls down the bottom, and then the soil can just soak it up as much as it needs. So what I'm planting at the moment, I'm planting some more cucumbers. I have already planted some of these up one of the trellis, but again, I want more of a succession sowing of cucumbers. So I'm trying to grow Space Master cucumber for the first time. It is a very compact variety, so I'm going to be just trailing it up some really small trellises, and apparently it's really high yielding. So I'm excited to give that a go. I've also planted, I know these aren't labeled, but I know what these are. These are some more rosellas because again, I love rosellas and I want to have a little bit more of a succession and just plant these around the garden for beauty as well as getting the fruits. I'm planting some more okra. This is what's it called? Crimson Spineless, I think it's called. It's the green variety of okra, and I prefer this much more to the red variety. I just really like the flavour of the green one a lot better. And then I've just got a bunch of flowers, mainly some Swan River daisies. I've got some more zinnias. These are the polar bear zinnias, and Livingstone daisies, and some salmon rose zinnias that didn't really germinate too well, so I wanted some more of those. So as you can see, it's just an assortment of different plants that they're not all related to each other. They're just really random, but I find if I plant something kind of, that climbs, that is tall, that provides beauty and something for pollinators, then if I'm planting that every weekend, then I have a really good variety of plants to play with that are all going to grow at different times and provide something different for the garden. Okay, so I'm going to grab all of my corn and then head over to the other garden. So you can see this is the area here where I'm going to be planting the corn, and I think it should look really nice, and once it grows up it'll be a nice kind of frame for this garden, as a lot of the other taller plants grow as well. I do think I need more height in this area, so comment down below any flowers that grow nice and tall, and I might be able to add them in that grow well in a subtropical climate. I do have some sunflowers, so they're going to grow quite tall, but I do feel like I need something else in this garden, so let me know what you think.
It's nothing new, but it's so good to see you. We do this every day, and I'm still so amazed by you. So hold me tight through the night. It's just us two, me and you. Oh, 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 I can't believe you love me. Oh, 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 I just feel so lucky. Oh, 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 still can't believe you love me. I hope it never ends, this being more than friends, yeah. You know I'm here to stay every single day, yeah. So hold me tight through the night. It's just us two, me and you. Oh, 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 I can't believe you love me.
Alright, so I just planted the grid in here, and I think it's going to look really, really nice. I need something tall in the center here to really draw your eye down to the back bed here. This is going to be full of flowers, so I think having the greenery from the corn here, and then obviously when the corn flowers and then has the corn cobs, it's going to look really beautiful in this little patch. I am also just going to give it a really good water in. I'm going to give it a fertilizer with this, and probably in another few weeks fertilize with this, and also give it some worm tea probably every week or so. So yeah, corn is definitely a very heavy feeder, loves nitrogen. So if you have a worm farm, it's a really good idea to put some worm tea or worm leachate, whatever you want to call it, that comes out of the worm bin, diluted in water onto your corn. It will absolutely love it. You could do the same with compost tea as well, or weed tea, whatever you have available that is high in nitrogen. Feeding regular doses of nitrogen is really beneficial for corn crops. So I think I'm going to leave the video here. I'm just going to enjoy my afternoon in the garden. It's such a beautiful afternoon, and I just want to walk around and enjoy it. So I'll leave you with some beautiful shots of the garden, and thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are in the world, and until my next video, happy gardening everyone. Bye.
We do this every day, and I'm still so amazed by you. So hold me tight through the night. It's just us two, me and you. Oh, 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 I can't believe you love me. Oh, 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 I just feel so lucky. Oh, 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 still can't believe you love me. never ends. Let's be more than friends.